Welcome back to my channel for the fifth in the series Intuition by Design. So there's a bunch of earlier videos. If you haven't watched any of those, I would encourage you to watch at least the first one. So I'm going to put a card right here for you to check out that first one, but they also all stand alone. So welcome to this one. And today we're going to talk about instinct versus intuition, which is located in the Spleen Center. Because the Spleen Center is the center for instinct or intuition, the immune system, and right timing. Okay, let's go ahead and dive in. So the Spleen Center is that brown triangle, if it's defined in your chart, pointing inward on the left-hand side. And according to the story of human design, the spleen and the emotional solar plexus is the brown triangle pointing in. These two were the solar plexus chakra, and they split apart at the end of the 18th century, and then we got the Spleen Center and the emotional solar plexus. And the Spleen Center, it's not a motor, but it's really powerful anyway. And because it's the center for instinct as well as intuition, it has the potential for us to get locked into fear. And so when I do readings for people and I take a look at what do they have defined in their chart, what's colored in their chart on the Spleen Center, that can tell me a lot about the types of fears that might be getting in their way. So what we're going to do today is we're going to look at all of the different gates of the Spleen Center, and we're going to talk about their higher expression, and then also about the kind of fear that you can fall into, particularly if you have it defined in your chart. Although, I actually just had a conversation with somebody recently who definitely had one of these fears, and it's not defined in her chart. So whatever your definition is, it's really good to know about these because they're not real most of the time. They're not. They're based in some kind of leftover instinctual fight, flight, freeze response that is probably not present time. We have a lot of conditioning that we still have from our ancestral line, our soul's journey, things that are kind of wired into our system that aren't really present right here, right now. Also things that happened to us when we were small people, right? And so we want to be able to come into present time. We want to actually be here now, right? I'm sure you've heard that before. And so we don't want to be wrapped up in fears that are not really relevant. And instinct for many people, not everybody for sure, but for many people, instinct is a little bit of an old story in the sense that if you're not in the midst of real and present danger, right, like actual danger right here in your environment, then you don't need the adrenaline that comes from instinctual fear. Okay. Instinctual fear is great to get you out of a dangerous situation, whether you're stepping out of the way of a bus or, historically more of a lion or a bear, or if you have somebody's going to attack you, right? It's really good in those situations. You want your autonomic nervous system to kick on because you become physically really powerful. You don't need to breathe all that much. You become really fast and responsive. But that's for short periods of time, short little bursts of energy, right? This is where you hear that story of the mother picking up the car off the kid, right? Because she's got this superhuman strength because of that kind of real and present danger. But we have this running in us a lot of times for a variety of reasons that I'm not going to go into right now, but I think you probably know what I mean, where that kind of survival mechanism gets turned on at a low level and just keeps going. And that is exhausting, and it will burn you out, and it happens a lot, in contemporary culture. And so it's vital for us, really, for our health and our well-being and our happiness, to be able to understand and to unpack and unwind that kind of instinctual fear that can be running our nervous system that's not helpful. Like, we don't need it, right? There's no actual, real, and present danger, right? So it can be a trauma response that never really got resolved, or that you're not aware of and not in command of, and it just kind of keeps running you, right? So you want your way out of that. When we get caught in these instinctual fears, it's really hard, if not impossible, to feel our intuition, because the body gets right, and then we lock up and we can't feel our connection to spirit. And so that's why it's the Center for Instinct and Intuition. And so we have to learn how to manage and ideally unwind, unravel, and release these fears so that the intuition can flow. And that's what we want to do to be able to open up really our intuition. If we give into those fears, if we fuel it, we give our attention to it, then we're kind of stuck, right? We're stuck in only being able to feel and express a small portion, a fraction of who we really are. We want to be able to have all of our higher intelligences at our command, right? We want that. We want our intuition to be online. And so in order to do that, we have to work with our fear and realize what it is and not let it control us. So I have found that understanding these splenic fears can be incredibly, like really incredibly liberating for people. Having done, I don't know, hundreds of readings, and I tell people about these splenic fears, they're like, how did you know that? I totally have all of those fears. I'm like, yeah, well, it's here in your chart, right? But like I said, it doesn't have to be defined in your chart. That's the first place I go for it in a reading, right? But occasionally it shows up without definition. So this is helpful information for you to understand yourself, for sure. But it's also helpful information for you to understand other people, right? Like if you see that somebody is really locked into one of these kind of fears, go look at their chart. See if it's defined in their chart, The good news about these instinctual fears is that because they're not present time, if you are able to differentiate between that feeling of fear and what's actually going on in your life, you usually can move through it relatively quickly, as long as you're not giving your energy to it. Because when you're giving your energy, your attention to something, you're basically fueling it, right? You're fueling it. You're giving it a lot of energy. So you don't want to do that, okay? You don't want to do that. You want to be able to be like, oh, there's that, fear of the past again. Gosh, it's just a splenic fear. Okay, I'm going to let it go. And one of the ways that you let it go is that you lean into the higher expression of these different gates. All three of the main circuits, individual circuitry, tribal circuitry, and collective circuitry, all run through the Spleen Center. So it's a really important center to get a handle on, and ideally to completely uplift it to its highest expression. So let's start at the top. The gate 48 is known as depth, or the well, which is its I Ching name actually. So this is traditional human design, has the depth. And the quantum human design name is wisdom. And this is in the logic circuit. It's collective circuitry. And it's a wonderful energy for research, for learning. It's done really well for me in terms of, getting my PhD and being a lifelong learner. And so it's really helpful that way. And it is kind of about the wisdom that we develop over time. as we learn and we experience, and we take in our the information and our experiences, and we digest it, and over time it really accumulates, right? It builds and builds and builds, and that is the power of the gate 48. People who have this defined in their chart often really like to just learn. They're often lifelong learners, kind of like first line profiles. And the fear of the 48 is of not knowing enough, which kind of makes sense, right? Its highest expression is really that form of wisdom that comes from having learned and digested and had a lot of life experience, as well as whatever kind of information you might have taken in. But its lower expression, really the disempowered, is I don't know enough. A lot of times people don't take actions in their lives because they are afraid that they don't know enough. I've seen this a lot with people who are, maybe wanting to create their own business, maybe wanting to step out into the world in a certain way, or maybe wanting to write a book or start a podcast or do YouTube, whatever it is, but they're like, I don't know enough. And so they kind of get stuck in this cycle of, I don't know enough. I don't know. I can't do that yet. Right. And that's just fear-based. Right. Because I know people who have the 48 usually know a lot, like really, really a lot. And the truth is you don't really need to know everything anyway in order to move forward with a lot of things in life. You need to know enough, but you don't have to be a master at everything in order to engage. So you want to watch out for that, the sense of, I just don't know enough. Right? And see if it's holding you back. Now, its mate on the other side of the spleen, which is also in the logic circuit, is the gate 18. So the gate 18 can have an edge to it. In a traditional human design, it's known as the gate of correction. And in quantum human design, it's realignment. So this is the kind of awareness of patterns and order, and when things are out of order, or where the pattern is off, right? And I have a really good friend, for example, who has the gate 18 defined in her chart, and she has told me she's never read a book that she didn't find a typo in, right? She sees the typos in everything, right? She sees the typos. This energy can be really great, for example, getting the typos out of your book, right? Or really great for accounting, or for anything that needs to be meticulous, right? So I would imagine it could be good for a surgeon, for example, to have the gate 18. You want to have that ability to be meticulous, to be able to see patterns, to see where things are off, and then to be able to bring them into alignment. Now, the thing is that it can have an edge. Like if you start correcting other people, you start correcting, other people's work. It's that kind of red pen on your schoolwork that you might have gotten as a kid. I don't know if people still get that, but people in my generation definitely did, right? You get your paper back and things are circled in red pen. It's like, ouch, right? It's like the gate of correction. So this energy can be very beneficial when you're in command of it, okay? Because, like I said, it can help really bring things into order, and it can help resolve. Like, for example, somebody who's a computer troubleshooter, right? Great energy for somebody like that to have. You just want to be aware of the potential shadow aspect, which is where you're correcting other people, or you're correcting things in a way that has a kind of harsh, judgmental kind of edge to it. You don't want to do that. But then the fear of the 18 is the fear of getting it wrong, right? Which makes sense, right? The fear of getting it wrong. And that can keep you kind of held back. And it's kind of that phenomenon where you don't want to raise your hand in class because you're afraid you're going to get it wrong, right? Or you don't want to speak up at a meeting because you're afraid that you're going to get it wrong. Or you're afraid of, just trying to build something, for example, because you're afraid you're going to get it wrong. So that's a very disempowering energy. Again, like the 48, that I don't know enough, or I'm afraid I'm going to get it wrong. And they're kind of, they're in this logic circuit over here. So this is left brain, it's strategic, it's analytical, it's logical. It is about patterns because the logic circuit is pattern circuit in quantum human design. So you just want to watch out for that. Again, if you notice these fears, you can be like, that's just my gate 18. It's not real. Is it really true that I'm going to get it wrong? Not only that, does it matter if I get it wrong? Because we get stuff wrong all the time, right? And then you just correct it. So if you can lean into the empowered expression of that 18, then I'm just going to correct it. If I get it wrong, I'm just going to correct it. It's okay, because mistakes is how we learn, right? Then right next to the gate 48 is the gate 57, which is known traditionally as the most intuitive gate in the chart, the gate 57. It's in the knowing circuit, which is highly intuitive energy. It's individual circuitry. It is known as intuition in traditional human design, or instinct in quantum human design. This can be a highly intuitive energy, absolutely, but its fear is the fear of the future. People who can have ability to feel into what's going to happen, right, which is a form of intuition, you can have that fear of the future, particularly if you sometimes have a premonition about something negative happening, and then you can have a fear about that. So you want to watch out for that energy, because you don't want a future trip. You don't want to get into this thing where you're projecting yourself out of the present moment and you're starting to live in all of the potential things that can happen in the future. And that's where you're living, because that's an instinctual fear. It's an instinctual fear. It's not present time, right? It's taking you out of the here and now, where you get to look and say, is there any real and present danger here in this moment? And if there isn't, then you can relax, right? But if you are one of those people who gets premonitions, this is really important for you to work with, because it can kind of hijack you, that fear of the future. You want to watch out for that. But when you do that, if you can catch yourself doing this kind of future tripping, right, you can be like, that's just my gate 57 going down the, negative rabbit hole, right? And dial it back and be like, okay, what is my intuition actually telling me? What is my knowing circuit actually telling me? What is my higher guidance actually telling me? Because the thing is that your higher guidance, your intuition, is not going to speak to you in the language of fear. It doesn't do that. It doesn't. Even when it's saying, don't do that, don't go that way, right? Or yes, go that way. It's not going to do it with a big dose of fear. It's not how it works. The fear is coming from this animal body, right? Not from your spirit self. And so you want to be able to just unwind that one. Now, on the other side of the spleen, the mate to the 57 is the 28, which is also in the knowing circuit. It's also in individual circuitry. So the 28, it's kind of an intense energy, okay? In traditional human design, it's known as the gate of struggle. And in quantum human design, it's been renamed as the gate of challenge. And I always like to say, challenge, opportunity, right? And even where is the learning, the adventure, the expansion in that? Because the gate 28 lives on the leading edge of higher consciousness. And it is about that expansion that's possible when we open up to our inner guidance. It comes right down through that knowing circuit and over through this right-hand side of the body and up through the central channel. It actually goes to both sides, but we're just talking about the spleen right now. So that's on the right side of the body. You want to be able to open to the actual higher guidance that's coming here. The fear of the 28 is the fear that life is meaningless. So it's kind of that existential fear. It's like what happens when we lose our way, where we don't know why we're here, we don't know what we're doing, we feel like somehow we missed the boat of understanding ourselves or understanding the world, right? And then we can spiral into this kind of like, right? That's the energy of the 28. And when you're in that, life is a struggle. Everything's hard. Everything's hard. I've got this in my chart, right? It's hard. So the antidote to that is to develop the capacity, the resiliency to be able to go, okay, so this came up. There it is. Okay, that's challenging. Life is dishing me up something else. That's challenging. Where's the opportunity? What can I learn in this situation? And not only that, because that's kind of the standard things we say, right? Is how can I grow myself on this leading edge of consciousness here in this moment when my 28 is activated, right? Because the knowing circuit and individual circuitry is where the evolutionary impulse of humanity is. So just the way we have to pull ourselves out of future tripping with the 57, we have to pull ourselves out of existential angst with the 28, because that's all old story. It's all instinctual fear, right? And the opportunity that the knowing circuit gives us is the ability to really open up to that higher guidance and allow it to direct us through our evolutionary process, through the parts of us that we need to grow in order to become all that we have the potential to be. So these last 3 gates are all in the tribal circuit, and they're in 2 different subcircuits of the tribal circuit. So the first one is the 44, which is in the business or commerce subcircuit of tribal circuitry, and its mate on the other side is the 32, which we'll get to in a second. So the 44 in traditional human design is known as energy, and in quantum human design is known as truth. So this is an energy that kind of traditionally is known as the energy for creating an environment for inviting people into something that you want to invite them into, right? So it could be into a sale, it could be into participating in a project with you, it could be anything like that where you're kind of creating the environment for that to happen. But in quantum human design, it's been renamed as truth. And I think this is really potent because the fear of the 44 is the fear of the past. So we had the fear of the future in the 57, we had the fear of the past in the 44. And the point of renaming it as truth is that the higher expression of this energy is to be able to break patterns of the past with truth, right? It's like to be able to go back and look at what has happened in your life or in the life of the tribe, because it's tribal energy, right? And what's actually the truth about that, right? What is actually true? Because a lot of times we have fears that are based in things that are, when we stop and think about it and we look at it again, it's like, no, it's not actually true, right? So why are we giving energy to it? So that 44, it can be very, very difficult if you notice that you're carrying this baggage around of something that you're afraid of that happened to you in the past. And this is common. It's common for people. But the power of the truth, right, to be able to break apart that baggage that you have. And it's truth, and it's also reframing. It's like being able to bring a new perspective into something that happened so that you can now hold it inside of you and in your relationship with others. Because again, it's tribal energy, so it has to do with your relationships, people who are close to you, people that you work with, people in your community, right? How can you hold a truth that's empowering for you rather than being disempowered by the fear of the past? And the shadow aspect of this, right, is to stimulate the fear of the past in other people in order to try to control or manipulate them, right? So you want to watch out for that too, whether that's something that you might do kind of unconsciously or something that you see other people are doing to you too. And you can just go, that's that 44 energy, that fear of the past. I do not have to give my attention to it. I do not need to fuel it with myself. Instead, I can lean into what is actually true. Now, its mate, the gate 32, is known as continuity in traditional human design or endurance, quantum human design. So again, this is in the business circuit, commerce circuit. And it's the energy to be able to hold on to an idea, a vision, a sense of possibility for something that you can create in your business or in your work, and it's not the right time to manifest it, right? I mean, this is not anywhere near the throat center, which is the center for manifestation, right? It's way down in the spleen. So you want to be able to hold on to this idea that you have and to be able to discern right timing and to allow it to gestate and to grow and to build inside of you and in your life in some way without feeling like you have to go out and manifest it right now. That's why it's endurance, right? You need to stick with it. It's kind of like that perseverance of the Gate 29, but it's related to a business idea, right? And this fear is that somebody's going to take your ideas. Somebody's going to take that, right? So you want to watch out if you do have something like that. Like I have a variety of different business ideas of things I want to manifest in the next 10 years, right? And I don't want to go into fear that somebody's going to steal them, right? And, if you need to get a trademark, get a trademark. If you need to get copyright, get copyright. Do those things, right? And I think they're a good idea. But don't do it based in fear, right? Don't do it based in fear, because anytime you build things based in fear, they're not that strong, right? You just want to say, this is a good business practice. This is how we do business, right? This is my intellectual property, if you will. This is my idea. And I want to put my trademark on it. Yeah. So the Gate 50 is also tribal circuitry, and it's in the defense circuit, and it's what it's called in traditional human design. And the 50 is known as values in traditional human design, or nurturing in quantum human design. So this is a really beautiful energy that has to do with nurturing, but it's nurturing in a way that helps us to know the values that help us understand who we are as a people. So it's a kind of a teaching energy. It's an energy for passing things on, if you will. It's a way of helping us know what our right behavior is, our standards of behavior. The example I always like to use is, use your words. Don't just hit somebody if they do something that annoys you. Any parent knows this one, right? Where the standard of behavior is, no, we don't just pick up a rock and throw it at somebody when they make us mad, or hit them with the baseball bat, which sometimes little kids can do because they're not always so in control of their emotions, right? So this is something that we learn, and the Gate 50 helps us to learn these things, right? So there's a variety of different things that can fall under that, and I think some of them are fairly common, things like what I just said, or not stealing from each other, or not lying, things like that, right? And then also particular groups of people may have their own specific values that they want to pass on, right? But it's definitely a quality of helping the youngers, the next generation, to have what they need to be able to grow into the people that they have the potential to become. And here, because it's tribal, it's to do it in kind of inside of the energy of the tribe. And the fear of the 50 is the fear of letting people down. Fear of letting people down, because again, it's tribal circuitry, right? And so when you, for example, have a fear of what other people think of you, that's kind of the 50. It's kind of that negative, disempowered aspect of the 50, because you're like, oh, what is somebody going to think of me? Am I disobeying the agreements of my tribe, right? Which is the base, often, of being afraid of what other people are going to think of you. We want to be able to use this energy, but we don't want to go into the shadow, which is where we're trying to control and manipulate other people. And you see this in, some really religious, often, communities now, where the dictates of what you have to do to be a part of the religion or part of the particular community can be really rigid, right? And if you transgress that, you get in trouble, sometimes in big ways. You want to watch out for that, right? But you want to be able to offer standards of behavior, what's appropriate, how do we know who we are as a people? My parents, when I was a kid, read to me from when I was the tiniest person. And I did the same thing with my kid because I come from a literary family. And so reading and the love of reading and the love of story was a thing that got passed down to me. So that's a kind of simple example that's not necessarily about a standard of behavior, but it is about kind of how we know who we are as a people. Okay, so that's the spleen. And the thing I want to underscore here is that the intuition that's available in all of these gates, okay, because they all have intuitive aspects to them, will get cut off if you're either in the shadow aspect or the disempowered aspect, the fear. And what you want to be doing is looking for what is the empowered aspect. What's the empowered expression of this energy? Because when you do that, you'll be opening up to the potential that is available to you, your intuition that's available to you through wisdom, through truth, through nurturing, through the ability to stick with something, the ability to turn, something that's really challenging into an adventure, the ability to bring alignment in, the ability to be in intuition and not go into fear of the future, right? All of those can be highly intuitive, and it can support you. Even the logical stuff, right? The 48 can be very intuitive. It's like, what am I going to learn? Where am I going to go next, right? Where's the issue in the pattern, right? So it's kind of paradoxical, I guess I'll say. But it is one of the things that's available to you. So if you've enjoyed these videos on intuition, I hope you will leave a comment down in the comments below, and questions, anything that you want to say. And if you haven't already, please come and join us in the Becoming Sovereign virtual retreat center that I created last month, and I invite you into. It's totally free for right now, and it is a place for those of us who are committed to our personal growth and evolution and love to use human design as a tool to help us do that. We love to gather, and we do live events together and have conversation and so on. So the link is down below. Hope to see you there. Many blessings. Much love.